Continuum 2023 ships with 50 seamless textures that you can take advantage of inside of BCC Plus Lite to incorporate gobos within your scene. To see this, I'm going to apply BCC Plus Lite from the BCC Lights category onto the clip in my composition. Inside of Effect Controls, I'll head to the Effects Editor and take a look at the new category, which contains only seamless textures. I'll click on a few so we can get a sense for the various light modifiers. And in order to see this a bit clearer, I'll head to the Parameter section and switch the view from Output to Gobo. Scrolling down to the Gobo section, we'll see a property at the very bottom called Edge Mode. It's currently set to Wrap, which allows this texture to be seamless. To see the original texture, switch this to Transparent. You also have additional edge modes that you can take advantage of, such as Repeat, as well as Reflect. I'll switch this Edge Mode back to Wrap and decrease the scale so you can see the seamlessness of this texture. Scrolling back up to the top, I'll change my view to Output, increase the brightness, as well as blur and displace the gobo. Now it should be noted that not all textures are seamless inside of this library. If I go back to see all of my textures, scroll down and take a look at this texture called Metal Grill, I'll click the rotate icon to reset the texture and switch the view back to gobo. You'll notice that the edge mode of the gobo is currently set to transparent. And if I set this to wrap, because this texture is not seamless, the edge mode doesn't translate with wrap. However, keep in mind that we also have reflect, which could provide a solution to have a repeated gobo pattern in your scene at various scales. And that's how you can access the new seamless textures inside of BCC Lite for Continuum 2023.
Hi, I'm Ben Brownlee from Boris Effects, and this is my 1-minute Mocha tip about grids. Grids are criminally underused by many Mocha users. It's up here next to the surface button. It uses the surface shape and builds it out with lines to make it easier to see any problems with your track. And when we play this back, the problems are obvious when we watch the grid. One other thing about grids is that we can control how they look. Click on this button in the top right to open our viewer preferences. And here I can control the density of the grid and even have it line up with some of the geometry in the image. If you're not using the grid to check or improve your tracks in Mocha, then now is the perfect time to start.
What if I told you that the most important ingredient for any high-quality video is high-quality audio? Let's do a quick experiment. What are you more likely to watch? Good quality image, proper lighting, but audio is so bad it's tough to understand me? Or okay video that does the job, but a lovely clear sounding audio? You know the answer. Here at Boris Effects, we are thrilled to introduce you to a brand new addition to our family of tools that helps you stop worrying about your audio quality. CrumplePop is an AI-powered set of software filters that makes you sound great. If you're doing an interview in a less than perfect room like this, use Echo Remover and instantly things sound better. Nice. Walking down the streets, you don't have to worry about the traffic noise anymore. Just add traffic remover. Now you can only hear the important things again, like me. CrumplePop audio tools are simple enough for beginners to use. Just choose the filter you need, and most of the work is done the moment you drag the effect on. And these effects are so fast to render, you can happily use them for real-time situations like streaming or video calls. You can work with the standalone application or plug in VST and AU filters in your favorite workstation. That includes Premiere Pro, Audition, Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, and of course, many more places. The Boris FX CrumplePop AI audio tools are available for you to download now. Say goodbye to surprise audio problems and let people focus on the most important sounds. Try CrumplePop for free today.
Boris FX Sapphire is a collection of over 270 video filters, designed for video artists and editors to create gorgeous graphic looks and sumptuous film effects. But there's always been one secret effect with the power to control all others: the Sapphire Builder. Builder is a node-based system that lets you chain Sapphire effects together to create your own unique effects and transitions. You choose the filters and masks and what parameters get shown back in the host. It's a great way to simplify complex effects without any of the mess. Sapphire 2023.5 gives you even more reasons to use Builder with new features, improvements, and presets. New parameter linking allows you to create interactions between controls and even different effects. Set a driver and you can link any number of other parameters to it, add offsets and multipliers to vary effects, or set up complex interactions. This removes the headaches with animating multiple effects and means you can focus on more important things than just juggling keyframes. All Builder effects can be saved as presets that are cross-platform and cross-host compatible. It's never been easier to share Sapphire effects between a team or across multiple projects. As you'll be spending more time in Builder, you'll love the faster way to find the effects you want. Quick access makes it easier to add effects into the node graph with a couple of keystrokes. No more navigating the expansive list of Sapphire filters. And if you have filters you use time and again, why not add them as a favorite, so they're always top of mind. One of the best ways to use and learn Sapphire effects is through the professionally designed presets. In Sapphire 2023.5, we've updated all the Builder presets to be clearly laid out, simplified controls with parameter linking, and updated host parameters. No confusion, you only see what you need when starting with a preset. But we hope you'll explore further. Just hit Edit Effect and you can customize this starting point to perfectly fit your needs. What's more, we've even added more effect and transition presets. Designed by industry pros, they're ready to use out of the box and take just seconds to adjust for your project. Boris FX Sapphire is available for Adobe, Avid and compatible OFX hosts. And if you're on a valid subscription or support contract, you get this upgrade for free. To learn more about what's gone into Sapphire 2023.5, to upgrade your existing software, or download a free trial, head directly over to boriseffects.com.
Welcome to Boris FX Live. Sponsored by Dell, Nvidia, and Intel.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Boris FX Live Special NAB Spring Sale Edition. I'm Ben Brownlee and as ever I'll be guiding you through today's show. Now, we've got a lot to show to you today, as this is our annual sneak peek at what's just landed or what's just around the corner for the Boris Effects lineup. This is also a bit of an unusual live stream for us because we aren't 100% live. A lot of the team are out in Vegas, walking around giant halls and trying not to lose too much money at the craps table. But for the majority of you who watch the replays, this isn't going to feel any different at all. But if you are watching live, we still want you to get involved. If you're on YouTube or boriseffectslive.com, we've got live chat going right now, and we're here to answer questions and respond to comments just as normal. If you glance at the chat now, I'm even in there too. Hello, other Ben. And just like normal, we are giving away a ton of prizes, like thousands of dollars of prizes. Dare I say, too many prizes, actually. And it's the same procedure as normal for joining in. You simply head over to boriseffectslive.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and drop your details in the prize form. That's it. We'll be doing live draws throughout the show and posting all the lucky winners in chat. So let's get moving for your chance to win. All right. After each segment, we'll be giving away a 1-year subscription to the relevant piece of software. So we've got Sapphire, Silhouette, Continuum, Mocha Pro, and CrumplePop all up for grabs. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors for helping us to put this show on. So thank you to NVIDIA, Dell and Intel. We are always happy for the support you give. And obviously a special shout out to Dell and this right here. All right, let's get to it. As I said, we are in Las Vegas at the moment for NAB, and shockingly enough, the NAB conference happens to coincide with our big spring sale. So here's VP of Global Sales, Nick Rodriguez, and Director of Marketing, Brian Fox, to tell you a little bit more about it.
All right, thank you, Ben. I don't want to take up too much time because I want to get on to the good stuff, but I do want to let everyone know we have a sale going on. Our spring sale is happening right now. And who better to talk about the spring sale than Mr. Nicholas Rodriguez, Chief Sales and Strategies Officer for Boris Effects. Nick, welcome to Boris Effects Live.
What's going on, Brian? Happy to be here. Thanks for actually having me live. I'm sure a lot of our customers have actually spoken to me, but I have no idea what I look like. So here you go, folks. Put a face to the name, but happy to talk about the sale.
Cool. Okay, so why don't you just run through it, let everyone know what the details are, let everyone know what's on sale, all the good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be doing a sale for NAB for the next week or so, and it's going to be 25% off. We're going to be having a sale on all the products, so Sapphire, Continuum, Silhouette, Mocha, Optics, permanent licenses, annual subscriptions, monthly subscription. It'll be very simple to make a purchase. You just go on our website. No need for a coupon code. 1 license per customer is the stipulation. We try to streamline it and make it as easy as possible. And I would say that in all the years that we've actually done this, this may be the easiest that has been so far. So please feel free to let us know how your experience has been when you make these purchases.
Cool. Okay, so big news this week, right? We merged with the CrumplePop team. We're super excited. I'm sure people are going to know, is CrumplePop part of the sale as well? Is that on sale? How's that going to work?
Well, let's see. Drum roll. Yes, we will have a sale for CrumplePop as well. First, let me say we're super excited to have them as part of the team. Super amazing products. And they will be on sale next week as well. 25% off, perpetual licenses, annual licenses, subscriptions, monthly subscriptions as well. However, unlike you cannot buy it on the Boris Effects website. You have to go on the CrumplePop website to make the purchase, and you will need a coupon code for that purchase, unlike Boris Effects. So, Brian, if you know what that coupon code is off the top of your head, please feel free to enlighten and let everyone know.
The coupon code, I do know this, is Boris Effects, which shows you the limits of my creativity, right? That's the coupon code, Boris Effects. Number 2, by the way, I forgot to let you know, we are talking from the past because you are actually at NAB right now, since this is going to air next week.
That's
So the
right.
sale is happening right now. The sale is on. CrumplePop 25% off. That's annual subs, monthly subs, perpetuals, 25% off with the Boris Effects coupon. Last question for you, which is one I got a bunch of people ask about in the last live stream we did with the CrumplePop team. Is CrumplePop part of the Boris Effects suite right now? How's that all working?
Yeah. So at the moment, the answer is no. We would like to, and eventually we'll put it as part of the suite. There are some technical things that we need to work out first. We want to make sure that the licensing is all the same and everything is streamlined and works the way that it should. Unfortunately, we don't have a date. We don't have a time. It is in our plans, but at the moment, it is not part of the suite.
Got it. Okay, so it makes sense. Some other things I want to tell everybody real quick before we get back to all the sneak peeks of the new products. Please join our Discord, right? We have a Discord. This is brand new for us. It's a really cool way to kind of talk with the product managers. Elizabeth is in there. Ben is in there. John is in there all the time. Harry's in there, right? Nick Harauz is in there as well. There's boards for Sapphire, for Continuum. Optics is a board for CrumplePop. So join our Discord. That's a great way to kind of ask your questions. We also have our community forums on boriseffects.com. If you want to ask a more technical question, that's a great way to post that or kind of get tips and tricks. You can read those Boris Effects forums. A live stream. We do these live streams every 2 weeks, but we also do a live stream called Office Hours, which happens on Tuesdays. Give us a like, give us a follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube. You'll get, turn those notifications on. You'll get dinged. Office Hours are super casual. They're just Elizabeth on there with a shot. You can ask questions. You can email in any kind of problematic shots. We'll work on those. It's kind of your time for an hour a week. So definitely check us out on that. What else can I tell you? Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have a TikTok, right? So follow us on TikTok. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you joining us. I hope you had fun at NAB without me. I don't know if that's possible.
Never the same, Brian. It's never the same.
All right. We'll get back to it. All right, Ben, back to you.
I mean, that sounds like a sale that's almost too good to pass up. But let's look at some of the new stuff you get if you purchase now. And we're going to start with Sapphire 2023.5. This is a really exciting release for me personally. I've had a little while to play with the new toys. So I'll actually pass you over to other Ben to see what we've got. Welcome to Sapphire 2023.5. Now we're going to be looking at this in Premiere, but pretty much everything we're going to see today can be done no matter what host you're in. In fact, all of the stuff that I'm going to show you isn't going to be in host at all. It's going to be in the Sapphire Builder. Now, if you're not using Sapphire Builder, after all of the times that we've spent together where I've said, please use the Sapphire Builder, I don't know what else to do. There's one really big reason for you to use the Builder, and that's because we've done a lot of work to it. And that's really going to be the focus of what I'm going to be showing you today. So if you don't know what the Sapphire Builder is, it's actually a way of combining all of the effects into one single effect. We've got two different versions. We've got S Effect, which is just a regular effect, and we've got S Transition, which is where you would build up your own custom transitions. So let's come in and bring in S Effect over onto this one here, and I'll have a little think and take a little look there. I'm not going to look at presets first. We do have a lot of presets that we're going to talk about. I'm going to come in and edit the effect. Okay, so we're now in the Sapphire Builder, and over on the left hand side we have all of our Sapphire filters. So all of the ones that you know and love are going to be in here. So we can have a look at what's happening over in the viewer in the middle. Fit that into view. And at the bottom here we have a sort of nodal based way of looking at these effects. So let's zoom out a little bit here. So we have our source going down straight into our result, and that's the thing that's being spat out at the other end. We're going to have a look at masks and backgrounds a bit later. You know, that's not going to be important for now. And we can just come in and we can, you know, double click, and it will bring in a blur, in this case, into our flow, into our workspace. So what's happening now is the source is going into blur, going into the result. Very nice. And over on the right hand side, we've got all of our selection parameters. Boom, 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 boom. Now here's the big change with Sapphire 2023.5. These parameters can now be linked together. And this seems like, oh yeah, okay, that seems like it would be kind of interesting. But actually, it opens up a huge world of other effects that we can do much more simply than we could do them previously. So for example, let's take a look at something we can do with blur. I'm going to come into blur. I'm going to click on the little stopwatch. And this is where we could do sort of auto animating stuff before. But I'm going to make this a driver. So that means this is going to be available. This property is going to be available to other properties here. So if I come into something like brightness, for example, let's open up brightness. I can now link this here and select my driver, which is going to be the blur amount. And now as my blur gets bigger, so does the brightness. You can see those two moving together in tandem. We also have offsets and scale. So for example here, when my blur is at 0, I can't see my image anymore because it's turned the brightness to 0 as well. The default value for brightness is 1. So let's put an offset of 1 in there. Now when our blur is 0, our brightness is at 1, so our image looks correct, or looks normal. So we can start to bring this up here. What we could also do is we can link this together with another one. So say I come into my offset darks, let's open this up, link this again to that same controller, that same blur amount, and now let's take a look what happens. We're getting a huge like blowout there. But what if I didn't want this to go you know, upwards as we bring this upwards? Well, I can come in here and I can set a scale on this, and we can even set our scale to a negative number. So we can set that to -1. So now as I draw this up, this value goes down. Now this is probably a bit too harsh. So -1, just doing the opposite is probably a bit too much, but I do want to push it around about there. Maybe that seems pretty good. So now we're controlling 3 values just with a single slider. But it gets better because we can control multiple nodes with single sliders as well. So if I come in, I could do a little search over on the left hand side. This is traditionally what we've done. One of the new things is I can just hit the tab key and we can do a fast search here. So if I know I want to add in something like a distort, I can just type in distort, and it brings up all of the effects that have distort in them. And the one I want is distort. So now even though my blur is set to be the driver, and we're looking at the distort, I can come into my amount here and I can link this to my blur amount. Let's click on view driver node, and that hops us right back to the blur, and we can get this nice little effect just by dragging on one slider. So the advantages of doing it within the builder, as opposed to building up multiple effects in your host, is pretty clear now. But we do want to be able to control it in the host. And this is where Builder also comes in, because we've got the choice of what parameters we publish into the host. So if I turn off all of these, we're not going to see any of these when we look at the effect back in the host. And the same with the blur. Actually, I can turn off all of these because the only one I really care about is this blur amount, because that's the one that's controlling everything. So if I hit OK now and I have a look at our S effect, I've got my one blur amount, and if I drag this up and down, you can see it's doing all that blur and distortion for me. Might not have wanted to go quite as deep on the blur. There we go. But you can sort of see really what that's doing there. Alrighty, let's take a little look now at this next clip. Let's come back into our effects. Let's call this one. Have a little look for S effect. There we go, Sapphire Builder. And this time we are actually going to look at some of the presets. So I'm just going to click on load preset here and move this into place so that we can actually see it. Because we've now got the ability to rename things and to use expressions for linking different parameters together, one of the things that we wanted to do was actually go through all of the old presets that we had and see if any of these could be updated or freshened up a little bit with the parameter linking in mind. So if I search for 2023.5, these are all of the ones that we have revisited and gone in and sort of trimmed things up and made things faster, made things better wherever we could. Like one of my favorite ones was twitchy mind control, but I hardly ever used it because it was just, there was a lot of things you had to sort of keep keep track of. Twisted mind control V2, not only is it even twistier, but it's a lot simpler to do because everything's being controlled with one sort of block of controls. But just because we've gone through and done all of these revisions doesn't mean we haven't had a chance to do some new ones as well. So we've got a new a host of new little ones we've got here. I think most of these have been made either by myself or John Dickinson. Most of the really pretty ones, the graphical ones, have been made by John. But I've also got this one that's projected vintage film. Let's turn this one on. Let's just play this one back, see if we can play this back in reasonable enough speed. Premiere, probably not. Premiere's not the fastest to play back stuff without rendering. We should be able to get a bit of an idea of what it's doing though. Now with any of these presets, you can always hit edit effect and actually dive in and see what it's doing. See what any of these are doing. Let's just sort of come along here so we can see we've got, actually this is quite a big one. Got a lot of stuff going on, which is why it's been important to be able to sort of simplify this and come in and turn off stuff where it wasn't necessary. And it's even got a little note saying swap out color fuse looks for the film fading effect to get a standard fade. Or maybe I'll just turn off 2-strip and turn on film fading. You don't tell me what to do, you're just a note. So we can sort of get really kind of granular in what we're doing with this, but noting that most of these things are hidden, so that when we do have a little look back in the host, only the ones that we're really interested in actually make it through into the parameter window there. It's kind of fun. I'm running out of time. There's no two ways about it. We're running out of time. I'm going to very quickly show you a couple more things. Actually, I want to show you one of John's things because I think it's just so pretty. I'll skip over what I was going to do. But I just want to show you John's things. Like all of this stuff that we're going through really quickly now. When Sapphire gets released, we've got more videos coming. We're going to go through a lot of this stuff in more detail. So don't worry if we're not able to do everything within 15 minutes, because we're just not. Yeah, so we have a look at something like the hot stripes here. I mean, this is lovely. I really, really enjoy this. I enjoy this look, and I think it's really cool. And the nice thing about it is it's also really flexible, because we've got most of this work happening with linking and parameter linking. We're able to do things really fast and affect multiple nodes just at the at the exact same time. So we're just sort of playing around with a few of the parameters here, not knowing what's going on, underneath or behind the scenes. I was going to say underneath the curtain, but that's not the metaphor that I was going for at all. So if we take a quick look in here, let's edit that effect there. Don't mind me that I've just made things look worse than it was. If we take a little look at the effect here, it's actually it looks like a really complex little effect, sort of coming through tons of different nodes, doing lots of different things. But if we come into something like maybe not raise, ultra glow here, yeah, ultra glow. Like, we've got two different versions of ultra glow happening, because ultra glow is really the secret sauce that binds a lot of this stuff together for some of these bigger looks. Like, we only have to make one change on the ultra glow color, because pretty much everything else is all being controlled like higher up in the tree. So if we take a look at that, like, we're changing one thing and it's rippling everything else down. It's really nice. There's a lot to explore on these presets, and start to build on them, and or use them straight as they are. They're good to go straight as they are, but I always like to customize things up a little bit if I'm using a preset. The other thing I just want to show you really, really quickly, absolute final thing, I know I've gone over time always, is just some of the new transitions. So I say they're new transitions. All they are, well, let's just play this back. They're not really new transitions. They're just new presets for S transition. So all of these ones have been built with the current tools that we have within Sapphire, and that's what's really just like so fun about Sapphire and the builder especially, is that you can start to put these things together and get effects that aren't within like a single filter, and you can sort of build and roll your own. It's like, even something like this is something a little bit more complicated. This one is, what's this one called? Luma circle wipe. Yeah, because what it's doing is it's doing a Luma key, and also combining that with a little circle wipe on the out as well. So you get this kind of, it gets really sort of nice little effect, smooth effect. You're not quite sure what's happening, but it's something that's different than a normal wipe, and it's different than a normal sort of dissolve as well. It's a really nice little combo. If you're not using the builder now, there has never been a better time than now to jump into builder. Working with parameter linking, working with favorite effects, which we didn't even see, and the quick effects as well, plus all of the presets. It's really it's a joy to start to explore. All right, well, that's my time done. I'm going to pass over to normal Ben, present day Ben. That's what we'll call him, and I will see you in another Sapphire tutorial very soon. All right. Well, I don't think I could have done that better myself. You're watching Boris Effects Live with several different versions of me, Ben Brownlee, and we are live in the chat. Even though these segments are pre-recorded, we are still live in the chat, so keep your questions and comments coming. Of course, if you want to stay completely up to date with all the movings and shakings in Boris FX land, there's no better way to do it than hitting that big subscribe button on YouTube. And you can also join our newsletter if you're a bit more traditional, or, you know, if you're Gen Z like me, you can join our Discord server and be part of that growing community there. The Discord server is actually a great way to connect and chat with the Boris FX team in a bit more of a casual environment. But you know, now it's going to be time for one of my favourite parts of the show. We're giving away free stuff. We've actually got a 1-year subscription of Sapphire to give away. And I'm going to let Chrissy or Jesse roll the tombola that we keep in the live stream cellar to pick out a lucky winner. And if you have a look over at chat, you can see if it was you. If it wasn't, don't worry, we still have plenty more prizes to give away. And to enter, all you have to do is head on over to Boris FX Live, scroll to the bottom of the page, and tippity-tap your details in the box down there. All right, great. Well, let's move on with the next product that we want to show. This is actually something brand new for the 2023 lineup, and it's actually the first time that Boris FX has offered audio tools. So we're going to see how CrumplePop's AI-powered audio filters make short work of some tricky audio tasks. So let's join Elizabeth Postol as she shows us some CrumplePop.
This year, Boris FX has entered a new field of developing plugins not only for video, but also for audio. CrumplePop is a set of audio restoration plugins designed mainly for video editors who don't have much time to dig into audio mixing, but still need to produce high-quality video with great sound. Before we start looking at any examples, I highly recommend that you wear some sort of headphones so you really can hear the difference that CrumplePop plugins make. Having said that, let's head over to my timeline. We won't be covering all of the CrumplePop plugins today, but we will touch most of them. And to start with, let's take something that is more or less common. Let's say you're editing an interview. The person who is talking wearing a lav mic, but he moves a lot. So you might end up having nasty sound of microphone rubbing against the cloth. Let's listen how it may sound.
And that's where we are. That is where we are.
One more time.
And that's where we are. That is where we are.
So you definitely can hear that annoying rustling sound. And the worst part is that the rustle happens simultaneously with his words. So you cannot just take your blade tool and cut it out, because then you would lose a whole word. So let me head over to the audio effects, VST3, restoration, and here we have a list of all of the CrumplePop audio plugins. Let me grab a rustle remover and apply it over my clip. This is the default interface of the plugin. There are a couple of dials, but you definitely can see which one is the main. Default value for most of the plugins is set to 80, and let's listen if that solves our problem.
And that's where we are. That is where we are.
So there is much less of a rustle now, but the main peak is still pretty hearable. So let's try cranking it up to 100.
And that's where we are. That is where we are.
Let's listen that again.
And that's where we are. That is where we are.
And basically, the rustle is gone. We didn't even need to tweak any of the rest of the dials. And to fix it, we spent maybe like 5 seconds just to find the needed plugins in the list. So you see how a huge time saver these plugins can be. Alright, let's move forward. If you're working as an editor for a blogger, and especially the travel blogger, you never know what kind of material can possibly hit on your timeline. Here I have a couple of pretty interesting examples, and big thanks to my friend Konstantin and Renat who allowed us to use this material. So let's have a look at them.
I'm currently walking on the Hillary Suspension Bridge, which is the tallest bridge in this region, and it's named after the guy who first summited Everest.
Pretty nice clip, but I can hear a couple of problems with the audio. The first one is that There is a river under that bridge and a waterfall nearby, and they both provide big amount of noise that may sound distracting. Let's listen to that more carefully.
I'm currently walking on the Hillary Suspension Bridge, which is the tallest bridge in this region.
And the second thing is that because he needed to speak a little bit louder than usual, we end up having an audio that is clipping. And you can clearly see that by looking at waveform or at our audio meters. And now, let's fix that with the CrumplePop. So for the background noise, the most obvious option would be to use CrumplePop audio denoiser. But actually, when I was first playing with that clip, I ended up using traffic remover instead, as that one gave me slightly better results. Most likely because frequencies of running water seems to be somewhere close to the traffic noise. So let's open our plugin interface and see what we can do. I would play back my clip to listen how it sounds with the default settings.
I'm currently walking on the Hillary Suspension Bridge, which is the tallest bridge in this region.
So the background noise is already becoming much less noticeable, but let's see how it will sound on the maximum value.
I'm currently walking on the Hillary Suspension Bridge, which is the tallest bridge in this region. And
this one seems to be too much because the voice starts to sound a bit unnatural. So I would leave that somewhere around 90, and I would leave that for now. The next thing that I would apply is CrumplePop Clip Remover to fix that clips that we have at the end.
I'm currently walking on the Hillary Suspension Bridge, which is the tallest bridge in this region.
Alright, let's compare to how it was.
I'm currently walking on the Hillary Suspension Bridge, which is the tallest bridge in this region.
So the difference is pretty obvious to me. Alright, now, because this is a video blog, most likely there are gonna be some background music in the final video. So why not to try checking out how the CrumplePop will sound in the mix? I would turn my plugins back on and drag some music clip that I have prepared. I would lower down the volume of the music to somewhere like -25. And let's give a listen.
I'm currently walking on the Hillary Suspension Bridge, which is the tallest bridge in this region. And it's named after the guy who first summited Everest.
Sounds pretty nice to me. Let's try comparing that if I would disable traffic remover. And I would leave the clip remover on to have the same volume balance.
Which is the tallest bridge in this region. And it's named after the guy who first summited Everest.
That was without the denoising, and now back on.
Which is the tallest bridge in this region. And it's named after the guy who first summited Everest.
So with the CrumplePop traffic and clip remover applied on, the voice sounds much more clearer and just fits better in the mix. Let's move forward. Our hero has finally crossed the bridge and reached the base of Everest. Let us hear how it is like out there.
The crew behind me is building Everest Base Camp. Every season, they disassemble it and reassemble it again. About 70% of the base camp needs to be redone from scratch.
Do you hear what the problem is with this clip? As you may know, Everest is a pretty windy place. It starts pretty mild at the beginning, but it gets much more stronger towards the end and distracts us from the story. And is there a tool in the CrumplePop toolset to fix it? And of course there is. There is no better choice than just to go into audio effects again and grab Wind Remover. What a surprise! Again, default value is 80, and let's try playback somewhere from the middle.
And reassemble it again. About 70% of the base camp needs to be redone from scratch.
It's getting better. Let me play it back again, but now I would turn it on and off during the process. So start with the on.
And reassemble it again. About 70% of the base camp
and now it's
needs
off.
to be redone from scratch.
So yeah, you definitely can hear the difference. And now let's try cranking it up to 100.
And reassemble it again. About 70% of the base camp needs to be redone from scratch.
The wind is gone. But now I really started to hear one more problem. There is a high frequency noise that you always can hear in the background if you listen closely.
and reassemble it again. About 70% of the base camp needs to be redone from scratch.
It feels like his microphone impedance is not quite matching the input impedance of his camera, and that's why you can hear that high frequency hiss. But who cares? The shot is already filmed, you can't go back to the Everest, so we need to fix it. And this is a perfect time for CrumplePop audio denoiser. Because that hiss is only affecting our high frequencies, I can turn down my mids and lows down, and the plugin won't be trying to restore anything there. And let's try listen it up.
And reassemble it again. About 70% of the base camp needs to be redone from scratch.
That's much better. And now let's try that in the mix. I would turn the volume of the music down again and listen.
And reassemble it again. About 70% of the base camp needs to be redone from scratch.
Fantastic! It sounds like it was recorded in a pretty normal conditions and not in the Everest base camp. And now my favorite part. Let's try the same thing with music, but now with the CrumplePop completely off.
And reassemble it again. About 70% of the base camp needs to be redone from scratch.
So what would you prefer to watch? I would definitely pick the more cleaner version with the CrumplePop on. Moving on to the last clip from this series. I hit play and let's listen.
So by now I'm 24, 25 years old, and I built a 7-figure company in the personal development space.
The first two problems, the wind and the hiss, is exactly the same as in the previous shot, so I would just apply the wind remover and the denoiser with the exact same settings. So the wind remover goes to 100, and the denoiser, I leave only the high frequencies. Let's listen.
So by now I'm 24, 25 years old, and I built a 7-figure company in the personal development space.
Okay, and now, if you look closer at the waveform, you can see that sometimes he speaks more louder and then more quieter. That may become a problem when we apply the music later on, so we need to even this part. In the older days, you might be doing it somewhere like this, by manually keyframing the audio gain, but now you can just apply the CrumplePop Levelmatic. And what it will do is even out all of that inconsistencies. The only thing that I would change here is turn my target level to somewhere like -6. Great, we are done with the voice. I found a music track that perfectly fits the mood of the scene, so let's enable that and listen.
So by now I'm 24, 25 years old, and I built a 7-figure company in the personal development space.
That sounds like a win, in all meanings. If you are still not convinced, let me play it back again without any of the CrumplePop plugins. So I turn everything off, and...
So by now I'm 24, 25 years old, and I built a 7-figure company in the personal development space.
No words need to be added here. And here you have it, perfectly packaged audio plugins that are easy to use, give great results, and can be integrated into the host of your choice. Follow the CrumplePop website to check out free trial and explore the power of AI audio restoration tools.
Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. Now, if you want to try all of this out without reaching into your pocket, remember to head over to CrumplePop.com and you can download the free level, which gets you the standalone sound app plus 2 free filters and the ability to test all the others out too. And of course, if you want to grab the full version, it's also a part of the big spring sale. Just use the promo code BorisEffects, all one word, and get 25% off your purchase. Now, this is a limited time offer and full terms and conditions can be found on the CrumplePop website. Now, before you rush to grab your credit card, if you've just joined our competition, or you might have already won a 1-year subscription to CrumplePop. Now, all you had to do was go to boriseffectslive.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and enter your details in the handy box there. That is it. And if you look at the chat window, we're revving up the tombola again and pulling a name out. Now, is it your name? Well, the only way to find out is to look at the chat now. No, there. You might be down there. If you didn't win, there's still time. Well, firstly, if you're enjoying what you're watching, please consider hitting that big thumbs up button on YouTube. It actually does help us out a lot. And then secondly, go over to Boris FX Live and enter the competition if you haven't already done so. We've still got a lot of show left, and we've got 1 year subscriptions for Mocha, Silhouette, Continuum, and the Boris FX Suite. The big one, the big boy, which is everything all in one. Speaking of Continuum, there's actually a lot coming in Continuum 2023.5. Now, although we don't have an official date for the launch yet, what we do have is Nick Harauz here to give you a very sneaky peek at some of the new things that are going to be coming in Continuum. So let's pass it over to Nick.
In this video, we're going to have a tech preview of what to expect in Continuum 2023.5. We've been hard at work at a bunch of new features that we're really excited about. And I'm going to take you inside of After Effects. We're going to take a look at one of those new filters that will be hitting the software sometime very soon. What I'm talking about is Super LED. Now, you might be familiar with LED, but this enhances on that concept, adds several new different modules inside of it for the ultimate control of stylistic design. So I have a clip inside of an After Effects composition. I've already done a search in my effects and presets for LED. Find BCC Super LED in the stylized category, which I'll apply to this clip. We get this lovely pixelated pattern across our footage. Now we can change the look of this by going to the LED shape and choosing between a square, round, and a polygon, which we can actually control the sides of. Setting it as low as 3 and as high as 9. I'll go back to the base value of 6 and choose to increase the scale of the LEDs, double to an amount of 100 so we get a closer look. Now we can play with the look of these by first of all turning on the bulb fade on parameter. And you might notice that the edges of the different LEDs have been affected. We can first of all increase the fade width as well as decrease the fade amount to create our desired stylistic look. In addition to this, we can make some of these LEDs that we're seeing here dead. By increasing this value, we increase the percent. If I set it to 35, you'll notice several LEDs just turned off. We can randomize that pattern with the randomized dead LED value. Now that we have a basic look, I'm going to bring down the scale of these LEDs to the value of 15. And in order to see the original footage that I was working with a bit better, decrease the gap value to something very low. Keep in mind that we have independent controls for both the gap as well as the scale that we can take advantage of. Now, in this instance of my footage, I only want LED to show up in a particular part of that footage. So I'm going to head over to Mocha and use Mocha masking in order to accomplish this. This is a very handy workflow built into a lot of BCC Plus effects. And in this case, what I'm going to do is create a very basic X-spline shape over the side of the TV here, since I know that there's a lot of flickering going on, which will be hard to track in the middle of the image. I'll make some changes to this shape. And in this instance, just track the translation, scale, and rotation, and click on the forward track button in the Essentials workspace in order to let Mocha do its thing. Now, while I'm using this shape that I defined as the tracking area, it's not the area that I want to mask. I'm going to set that up next and then attach it to the tracker. Let's get a preview of the end results. We can see Mocha did a pretty good job of tracking that area. I'm going to stop playback. And let's name this layer track. I'll now turn off the eye icon because I don't want it to show up inside of After Effects. Then select the X-spline tool one more time and make a shape around the TV. Now that that's set up, I'll attach the layer 2 using the layer properties here, the link to track, setting it to track, and I'll call layer 2 mask. If I move my playhead throughout this scene, I'll see here that I need to make a few changes to that mask. This is where Mocha really shines if you're not used to it. I can select all of these points to extend the mask and refine it. Because the shape and track data is separate, this is not going to require me to do this on every single frame. I'll do a preview. That mask is adjusted accordingly. If I stop playback and with the track turned off, go back into After Effects, we'll now see that the LED pattern is limited to the television screen. Now, the magic of working in Pixel Chooser is that we can easily go inside the properties and underneath the mask settings, invert that mask for an entirely different look, as well as increase the feather. You should also note, I'm going to duplicate this actual clip, and on the bottom shot, remove BCC Super LED, where I can get a different blend based on LED settings, where it's not as dark because it's blending in with the underneath footage. Inside of Super LED, when it launches, there will be a blend mode that will allow you to do this without having to duplicate that clip. Now, I will uninvert that mask, where we can see the dead LEDs, not to mention the pixelated pattern, which we can take advantage of further by blending it into the clip with Shift equals here. I'll set this to overlay. Now, one thing that you might note is that while we have this limited to the size of the screen, it's not tracking with the shot. The LED bulbs are not moving. This is another new feature that's going to be added to Continuum 2023.5 called Mocha Parameter Tracking. You can see it showing up here inside of my effect controls, but keep in mind, I'm not ready to show you this in terms of a preview, but you're definitely going to want to come back and check this out. Before we move on, I just want to show you a couple other examples of Super LED, but this time inside of Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, one thing you may have noticed is all of the other sections that Super LED ships with. That includes the option for a flicker, adding glow, video glitch, smoke and fog, to name a few, to make the perfect LED effect. What you're seeing here is a ton of flicker added to the end results. If I stop playback and just escape here, press Shift 5 to reveal the effect controls of the shape pattern, I just want to draw your attention by closing out the LED section and going to flicker, where not only do you have an overall flicker for the entire pixelated screen, but an independent blink intensity and blink speed, which is going to do more to those individual LED values. Definitely something to incorporate in terms of adding some really cool strobe-like looks that you see here. In addition to this, right now you're looking at how LED is looking over various particle simulations inside of a new sequence. Let me escape out of here so we can take a look at this. And this last example actually happens to be from Particle Illusion, a preset from 2023. What's been added on top of this preset, if we take a look at the black video here at the bottom, is Super LED with a very low scale and gap value, along with Prism activated to create a little bit of chromatic aberration in the overall look and feel. Similar attributes were applied to this previous look of a network satellite, very small LED values, mixed with a low gap value with some color correction and a slight bit of prism. While this is one feature that's going to be available inside of Continuum 2023.5, there's also going to be a lot more, including activation of Beat Reactor and several BCC Plus effects, along with that Mocha parameter tracking, a new effect for orbs, light flicker, much, much more. To find out more information, just stay tuned and check out borisfx.com in the months to come.
Okay, thank you, Nick. We're not done with Continuum yet. A firm favorite from the Continuum collection is the particle system particle illusion. It's become a part of other Boris Effects software too, including Silhouette and Optics, when we need to add some particle magic to still images. And you can even download a completely free standalone version too, right now. You don't believe me? Well, I mean, firstly, I'm offended. Secondly, you should head over to boriseffects.com right now and download it. Just open up another browser tab. I don't mind. I'm still going to be here. It's fine. Anyway, there are big changes coming to Particle Illusion 2 when Continuum is released. And who better to talk about these than particle enthusiast and Particle Illusion product manager Alan Lorence. So let's hear from Alan now.
I'm Alan Lorence, and I'm going to give you a preview of what's coming in Particle Illusion 2023.5. There's a lot to look at, so let's jump right in. So I'm going to start by closing the presets panel because I'm not using presets here. And first thing I want to show you is what's probably my favorite feature of this release. And it's an enhancement to something that we added a few releases back, and that's particle lines. And the new part of that is that you can now draw trails with lines. So I'm going to just turn that on, and there you go. Each particle is tracing out its path. Let's take a look at what you can do with this. So this is a really simple example. Just got some slow moving particles, and I'm just going to turn on trails. And this is, I must admit, not too attractive, but it's a great way to demonstrate what you can do. So I'm going to start by changing the trail length. Just make that 50, just nice and long. And then I'm going to adjust the taper. And taper really shows up best on thicker lines, which is why I went with such a thick line. I normally don't use lines at that thickness. Trail fade, I'm going to crank up, and that works on any thickness line. And here we've got just a beautiful little stroke now for each particle. So nice. So only 3 controls, but combined with the other line controls, really pretty useful. Let's see some other examples. So first of all, the particles don't even need to be visible for lines to work, as long as the opacity is not 0. So in this case, I've got 0 size particles, but let's turn on trails and see what's happening. Wow, that's so cool. They're just kind of going crazy. Let's look at a preset that is, I don't know if it's from the last release or maybe the one before, but Golden Lariat, it's got a lot of tiny particles that are kind of swarming around that you can't really follow because they're meant to be background elements. But turn on draw trails for those, and they become sort of the feature. Look how nice that is. All right. This is a preset that I made probably 15 years ago or so, and it's called Super Fireworks Party, and it may not be clear why I called it that until you turn on trails, and now you can see that it is a Super Fireworks Party. So took a while to get there, but this preset came through in the end. This one, though, brand new preset from last release, 2023, that Ben made. Really love this one. It's one of my favorites. I love the way the particles move. They flow a little bit. They're just beautiful. I didn't think that turning on trails would make that much of a difference, but I love it even more with trails turned on. Even better. So we've made some changes to lines that aren't trails either. So this is a really simple example. And I'm going to turn off the HUD to show one of my kind of peeves about lines. And when they're all connected to a point like this, and this is just using the connect to emitter, And so they're all connected to the emitter, and it makes that sort of starburst pattern, and it sometimes that gets in the way. It's not exactly what is intended. So there's a new lines fade option. This works for anything except Trails, because Trails has its own fade. And so turn this up, and you can fade out the start of the line. You can see that starburst went away. I can make this negative and fade out the end of the line as well if I wanted to. But for me, crank that up, get rid of that starburst, makes it much more effective, I think. Really like that. There's a second new thing we've added to regular lines. Works for Trails too. And it works on particles that have some size variation like this one does. And it's this size scales thickness. And if I crank that up, can't really see what's happening. I'm going to make the thickness quite a bit more too. And now you can see that the larger the particle, the thicker the line. So kind of a really great effect. That size scales thickness. So let's stop talking about lines for a while, because you probably don't use lines in every single project. But something that you do use in every project is color, and more specifically particle color gradients. And so I'm going to double click this gradient on the node, and that will open the color gradient editor. And you can see a lot of new options here if you're familiar with this. The first one I'm going to do though is the most impactful, I think, and that's load preset. And look at that. You've just got a huge selection of color choices here. And I'll choose one that I like and show you some of these other features. You can flip the gradient now. Not so useful in this case because this is using random colors, but possible. You can evenly space out the color stops. This one's great. Click this to generate a random color at each stop. You don't always get nice combinations, but sometimes you get something pretty surprisingly nice. And the other thing I should point out about this color gradient editor is that it has full undo redo now. So if there was one of those random colors that I liked, I can Control Z, Command Z to go back, or go back, redo, and get back to the one that I like. Just a great way of working. There's other controls to adjust the saturation of the entire gradient, and we've added some hotkeys for adjusting the hue and saturation and value of individual stops as well. Then I can save a preset, of course. And now when I load, the yellow dot indicates the presets that I have made myself. And the non-dotted ones are the factory presets. Just a really changes everything about working with color in particle illusion. And I should point out that the alpha gradient has its own set of presets as well. So this is going to really speed up your work, because oftentimes with alpha gradient you're just making something fade from black to white and back or whatever. Having those presets is going to be such a time saver. So deflectors, if you've ever used deflectors before in particle illusion, let's just say that they were always a little quirky. Maybe that's a good way to say it. Particles would leak through the joints at times. Sometimes the bounce would be sort of unpredictable and particles would accelerate. And if you worked in 3D, you weren't really sure what was going on because the deflectors weren't really true 3D objects. Well, now in Particle Illusion 2023.5, I switched to 3D. You can see that deflectors are now full 3D objects. And we've also refined them so that they don't have the leaking problems and the bounce issues. Just really, if you've stayed away from using deflectors because of some of the shortcomings of previous releases, take another look at them in 2023.5. It's really fun stuff. And force objects have got a new feature as well. This is the classic just force giving a straight, constant motion to the particles. What we've added in 2023.5 is direction turbulence. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this up a little bit, around 50. And what we've got now is you can see that there's clearly this is no longer just a constant force. It's moving all over the place. And this is using the same turbulence field that's in emitters. So if you're familiar with working with that for position turbulence for particles, same sort of thing. So you've got all the same controls, frequency, octaves, and of course you can add some auto evolution to it, and then you just get some really nice organic looks out of this. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this and get some really pleasing results. I should point out that you might be thinking, well, isn't that exactly what the grid forces were? And grid forces have been around for several releases. And I'd say yes, I think that maybe the direction turbulence sort of makes the grid turbulence, the grid force sort of obsolete. Grid force, the particles go into each grid, and each grid can have its own direction. So it's a little more, not as smooth as the direction turbulence. So I would say take a look at direction turbulence, and you'll probably prefer that over grid forces. So far I've been showing you features that are available in both the standalone and plugin version of Particle Illusion 2023.5. Now I'm going to show you some plugin only features. And so I'm going to switch over to After Effects. This will work in any host that supports PI, but I'm just using After Effects to show this. And I've got a text layer, and you can see my text. I'm setting it to just 10% opacity, just so we can see it during the example. And in Particle Illusion, I'm using these new particle masking parameters. And mask particles is set to off. The emitter itself is just a plain emitter or box emitter. I used plain because I only really need it to be 2D, and it just needs to be big enough to cover the entire mask that I'm using. And I'm going to set that to mask with layer. And I am choosing the particles text layer, and by default it's set to use the mask for particle creation. And what this means is the particles are being created only in the white areas of the mask, but then particles are free to move anywhere outside of there. So if they're falling like these small white ones are, you can see that they move outside of the mask area. So the mask is only used for particle creation. The other option, we've got render mask standard, and this is, you might wonder why we have this option. This is just using the mask as a straight compositing mask, as you can do with After Effects or any host. Why would we offer this ability? Well, you have to remember that inside Particle Illusion, you have the ability to render a movie directly from it. So that's where this option is important. So that does just what you think it does. It just masks out the Particle Illusion layer. Kind of an interesting version of that is render mask full particles. You can see that when you do a standard mask, it just crops off any particles at the edge of the mask. But render mask full particles, if I switch to that, you can see what this does is it's actually drawing the entire particle. So some of these are big soft glows that are outside of the area. And you can see right here, there's a great example of seeing the full particle. Now these, the difference between this and let's say the for particle creation is that particle creation, the particles start in the mask and then can go wherever they want. In the render mask version, particles can start anywhere, and as soon as they cross into the mask, then they become visible. So some nice options there with particle masking. I mentioned that we can use Pixel Chooser, and Pixel Chooser is a Continuum standard sort of mask feature, mask and matte. And so if I select Pixel Chooser, then if I go down to the Pixel Chooser, you can see that there's some presets for different shapes. There's matting options, and right now I've got it set to use the text layer, and let me show you what it looks like. I've added a little bit of blur to it though, so it gives it a soft edge. So you don't necessarily need to, add a feather to your text or anything like that. You can use Pixel Chooser to go ahead and do sort of more advanced things to it. So it's a great option to have. So that's masking, particle masking inside Particle Illusion 2023.5 plugin version. You may have noticed that some of these nodes have a little information icon. That's because nodes can now have notes. And so I've opened up the rename dialog, and you can see that there's a notes area. I can unlock the notes and then add a note. And the nice thing about this is when I hover over that, it shows me the note in a tooltip. So really helpful to sort of make things easier to use and understand. Any node can have that. There are a bunch of other little features that we've added too. Things like being able to change between frame and number display, different usability for the in and out points, and all those types of things. There's too many to list, but we've made dozens of changes in that way. So that's a look at what's new in Particle Illusion 2023.5. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Alan. You're watching Boris FX Live and a sneak peek of what's coming soon in the next few months with Boris FX software. Now, if you're enjoying this, then don't forget to hit the thumbs up button on YouTube. It's always appreciated. And of course, it lets us know that you enjoy this type of content. Now, I've been exploring the new features on Continuum and Particle Illusion, and I've been having so much fun with them. Being able to go back to older projects or emitters and change everything up with a few clicks is actually, it's amazingly gratifying. And I'm delighted to share this gift with one of you too. Now, if everything's going according to plan, there'll be a lot of questions being asked and answered in the chat. No, hang on. Yes, no, the chat is that way. It could be down there. But what we're doing is we're going to be giving away an annual subscription of Continuum now, which also includes Particle Illusion. So it gives you the opportunity to play with Particle Illusion immediately. Because, of course, you'll get 2023, yes, you'll get that immediately. But all active subscription users will also get the newest version of the software the moment it's released. And that is free as part of the subscription. Now, I know your finger's hovering over the buy now button, but just wait a moment, because if you've been to borisfxlive.com, you'll have seen the little competition entry bottom at the bottom of the page. It's actually free to enter. It takes just a moment to add your details there, and you get to join our prize draw. So it's time. So let's spin this wheel again, and we're going to see who's going to win the annual subscription to Continuum. So let's pick out a name now. Now, of course, I'm just a recording, so I don't know who's won yet. Let's take a look at the chat together to see who's been pulled out the magic box of names. If you didn't win, there's no better time than now to buy, because we're having our spring sale right now. If you go to the Boris FX online store, you'll see all the prices are already discounted for you. You don't need to do anything. You just need to click that button and you buy. Now, if you want the CrumplePop audio filters that we saw a little earlier, you can also get 25% off of them by entering Boris FX, all one word, at the CrumplePop checkout. Now, full terms and conditions for these can be found on each of those web stores. But, I think we should keep this train moving through and take a look at the next preview of our coming software. And now's the time for Silhouette 2023. This is a rather grand release, so we're actually splitting this part up into two sections. We're going to start with another visit from Elizabeth Postol before we head into some other new features being shown by another clone of me. So I will see you back in just a short while.
Hi, this is Elizabeth from Boris Effects, and I'm excited to give you a sneak peek at what's coming new in Silhouette 2023. This release has some new features that will make your life as an artist more easier, and I'm sure, more fun. Without further ado, let's jump in. I would start with the feature that I'm personally most excited about, and I'll show you why. Here in Silhouette 2023, we added a node called Stability. This is one of the new AI-powered tools Boris Effects is releasing this year. If the node name sounds familiar to you, that's not an accident. You may already have some experience generating images using AI, like Stable Diffusion, but what Stability Node allows you to do is to generate images and perform machine learned in-paint and out-paint work without even leaving Silhouette window at all. But how does it work on a real project? Let's start simple. I have an aerial shot of a beautiful mountain, and as it often happens, you may end up having unwanted people or even a film crew members appearing in your shot. Without digging into parameters, I can just drag and drop a node into my node tree, switch the modes to the in-paint, and by having already created a simple mask around the area that I want to clean up, let's click Generate and see what results we can get. It would take some time, depending on the settings, to analyze the shot and do its thing. For me, it took around 20 or 30 seconds, and in the end, we end up having 4 different variants for the in-paint region. And there is no way that you could achieve the same result by doing it manually in such short amount of time. The image menu also serves as a history, so if you're not satisfied with the results, you can click Generate again, and that will give you 4 more new samples. But you can always go back to any of the previous variations that you've already have. Each image that you generate automatically stores inside your main Silhouette project folder, so there is zero chance of losing a file by accidentally moving or deleting it. By utilizing the Mocha's planner tracking, you can accomplish removes in a matter of seconds. And now you're ready to be working on the best HBO shows. You know what I mean. Let's have a look at another example. This one is gonna be a bit different. Previously, we were focusing on how to remove stuff from the shot, but with this one, I want to go the opposite way. I want to enhance the look and add a giant mountain somewhere over here. And I can think of 3 methods how we can use stability to achieve that. Method number 1 would be to use stability as a simple image generator and try to get a picture of a mountain that I can later comp in. So I would leave the mode on its default state, that is generate, and I don't even need to connect the node to my source. The only thing that I need to change is to add my text prompt. That should be a basic description of what I want to get. So let's type in big mountain and click generate. And here's our first set of images. This is not quite matching what I was expecting in my head, so what I can try to do is either change my prompt to be more specific or change the model. I personally think that the Stable Diffusion version 1 of 5 gives slightly better results if I want to get more photorealistic look. So let's change that and try generating again. Alright, the second set is ready, and this one is looking much more better at my own taste. Even though I really like the first 2 options, let's see if we can make that even better by using the second method of using stability. So to try the second method, I need to connect stability node to my source. This way, it will work as an image-to-image type of generation. What does it mean is that the image that is generating will inherit the general style and the colors from the original source. I won't be changing any settings yet, so let's just click Generate and see what we can get. Alright, you see how different results looks now. But they look too similar to our source, and our text prompt, Big Mountain, was mostly ignored. To fix that, what I can do is go into Options and increase the value for the prompt string to something like 15 and decrease it for the image. And let's try generate again. Great, the generation is done, and let's have a look. So we're slowly getting there, and the mountains are definitely getting bigger. This option looks pretty usable to me, but let's move on to the third method of using stability, as I think that one would be the most fastest and the easiest one. So what I would do now is change my mode to the in-paint again. Previously, we were using in-paint without any text prompts, so what stability tried to do is just fill the gap. But with using text prompts, we can be more specific. Let's try even changing the big mountain to something like Everest. But to use in-paint mode, we need to have our alpha. So let me add a rotor node and connect that to my node tree. Now I can grab my X-Plane tool and draw a super rough shape where I want my mountain to be. So something like this. I avoided the people as I don't want to spend time rotoscoping them. Now I get back to the stability node and click generate. And wow, this is already looking pretty stunning to me. There are minor things that I would like to tweak, but in general, 80% of the work is here. So let's finalize it now. I think I would go with this image. Because stability generates just one static frame, we need to merge the plate with our footage. So let me grab my composite node and connect that accordingly. This one goes to the background and this one to the foreground. The thing that is bothering me now is this hard edge that I definitely can't see. Because stability passes the alpha through, I can go back to my rotor node and add some feathering to blend it better. That's much better, so let's move on. Now, if I would zoom in somewhere right here, and I hope you can see that through the YouTube compression, but you may notice that something is a bit wrong. And what I'm talking about is grain, or to be more correct, the lack of grain. And here's where we're slowly transitioning in what is also new in Silhouette 2023. This release has major improvements to the grain management workflow. We have developed a couple of tools to help you add, restore, and of course, remove camera grain. The rule of thumb is that any paint or comp work you do should be done on a denoised material. And once your comp is finished, the last step is to add grain back on top. So we didn't do the denoising here in the first place, but let me show you what the full process really should look like. So I would grab a completely new node called Denoiser ML. Once you add it to the node tree, you can see the result straight away. I would zoom in so you can have a better look. This is before, and this is after. This tool was developed internally by the Boris FX team. It has been trained on a wide range of modern cameras, so it provides a really good result out of the box. The only thing you might want to change is the denoising model. Here we have two options. The first one works best for removing general sensor noise, and the second one is a better option if you have some compression artifacts or if your scene was shot in a really low light. This is definitely not a night scene, so I would leave the first option. Okay, but that's only the half of the process. So we removed the grain in the first place, but how do we restore it back at the end? One great tool for adding noise back would be Sapphire Ultra Grain. It has been around for some time, and it's best suited for cases when you're not so concerned about some specific grain pattern, but you just want something that would look good, without spending a lot of time by tweaking it up. Inside Ultra Grain, we have a big variety of presets that emulates the look for most popular cameras and films. I like to use Compare Split Mode, as it's easier to choose one when you can't see before and after. So just go through the library, pick the one you like, and you're done with your grain. Cool. But what if you're working on something like a feature film and your supervisor is super picky about the grain? It is not acceptable to have a completely different noise patterns in adjacent shots because it will break the continuity of the scene and simply not pass through the quality check. Then the Ultra Grain won't be the best choice for you. That's why in Silhouette 2023, we added a new node with a completely different approach. Meet and greet, regrain. The main concept behind regrain is that instead of trying to match the noise by eye, we can analyze the footage and rebuild the grain pattern that would perfectly match the original one. That's why regrain requires 3 image inputs. So to see how it works, let's connect everything accordingly. So the first input should be connected to our original plate. Second one should go to the denoised version. Let me rearrange stuff a bit. And the third one should go to your comp. After everything is connected, let's click Analyze. So basically, regrain compares the denoised version to the original one, rebuilds the grain pattern based on that, and applies it over your comp. That said, you don't always want to regrain the whole image. So if you also connect an alpha, you can apply the generated grain pattern only to the area where the paint work actually has been done. To check if that works correctly, you can enable the visibility of the cell pattern, and that will give you an overlay showing where the new noise is being applied. Speaking of the sample box, It defines an area where you sample the pattern for the scattering, so it's best to place it somewhere in the dark area without any details. So somewhere right here should work. And now, if I would zoom in somewhere here and switch between before and after, you can see that the grain is identical. By using regrain, you'll never get a comment from your supervisor saying your noise is not matching, because it will be literally the same. So it completely eliminates the pain of spending time trying to match it manually. And that's all from me on the silhouette side. I hope I've shared some of the excitement with you, and now you can't wait to try those tools by yourself. Thanks for watching. Passing it on to you, Ben.
Now, there's a lot of stuff I want to show you in Silhouette 2023, but we're going to start with expressions, and we'll sort of take it from there. Now, in this first little setup, I've got my main shot, which is this one here. I've tracked in the finger, very simply, and I've added in a particle illusion node as well, just to give us some little sparkly things. That's kind of nice. Expressions are a way of letting us link together multiple properties, so we can just do one set of keyframing, for example, and it will affect things across the board. And to create these things in Silhouette, it's actually really, really easy. So with this one, let's come down to my particle properties. And I want to only have the expression start, I only want to have the particles starting when the finger lifts up. So I'm going to take my number and take that down to 0, add a keyframe, come a couple of frames ahead, and then when the finger lights up, I can take this up to 100, and then as this goes along, maybe I'll take the number down just a little bit. So we can see in the timeline, we've got three keyframes all waiting for us there. Boom. Lovely. Let's turn off that overlay so we can just see the particles there. There we go. So if I wanted to, come in and adjust things like the size or the life at the same time, previously what I'd have had to have done was, make all those keyframes again on multiple different values. We don't have to now. If I want my number to affect something like let's have it affecting the zoom, for example, so the size of these things, I can just drag the number down onto zoom and it automatically writes in the little expression for me. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So number of particles and properties, lovely. So it means that as we come down to the bottom here at start, our zoom is at 0 because our number is at 0. And that kind of comes in and moves forward in the same way. Very dainty, very nice. But we can use simple maths to come in and affect this. So maybe this is a little bit too small, a little bit too dainty for me. So all I have to do, come into the expression, I can just do multiplied by 2, and then we now have that coming in and multiplying whatever value that my number is by 2. So that's just a simple way of linking values together within a node. What we can also do is we can come in and we can link between nodes as well. So if we just bring this one in here, I've got a little bit of a camera shake. Let's play this back. It's a very small camera shake. Just adding a small amount of sway. But let's duplicate this. So Control or Command D, bring that in there. And if I want to link between nodes, there are a couple of different ways of doing this. The first way is to just literally come in and say, well, here's the one that we want, the property we want to take from, so amplitude. I can use the little menu over here. Probably that's going to get cut off. What I'll do then is I'll split my node over here so we can see this a bit better. and we can copy the expression reference. So if I come into the next node that I want to affect, the second camera shake, click on my little button to start the expression, I can just paste that in. So it's pasting in from camera shake 2, that's that node up there. Parameter scale, let's multiply that by 4, why not? And then if we play this back, oh, it's a big one. It's a big one. Maybe we'll just multiply that by 2, eh? But we can definitely see what's going on there. Now, the other way of doing things, of course, is to have multiple windows open. So let's just bring our node back into where it was before, just tabbed in here, and I can lock this up. So this is going to be locked in place, which means we're going to always be looking at camera shake 3. What I can do now is I can add in another window down at the bottom and then just drag that over, and this can be whatever I want it to be. So I'm going to look at camera shake 2 now, and I can just drag between different nodes, and this is giving me maybe that translation there, and we'll come in and we will divide that by 2 or something, and let's play that back. So we sort of link different things together, you know, between different nodes. Now we can take that even further, in fact, and if I let's come in to my next. I'll just show you this one because this is kind of interesting. What I've got here is a radial gradient, just a radial gradient, which I can move around, and then just using, you know, regular Python math. I've hooked this up to a color corrector into the temperature, and all I'm doing is taking the position and finding how far it goes from the center of the screen. So that's session width, session dot width divided by 2. That's the center. And then I'm dividing that whole thing by 5. So if I come in and start moving my radial gradient around, we can actually come in and start to change up, you know, different properties just using regular Python math. I've also got blur in here, which is pretty much the same thing. I've just changed brought everything into an absolute value here, so that even the negative values are going to be positive values. So now when I move further away from the center to the left, it blurs out and turns yellow, and when I move further away from the center over to the right, it turns a bit more cyan. So this is kind of fun. There's a lot of stuff you can do. The other thing I want to have a look at here is how we can sort of start to combine expressions and actions, and it's really going to be quite important with something like this, where we have multiple roto nodes and quite a lot of layers, and I want to be able to think about controlling motion blur between these. So motion blur is going to be, you know, it's going to be very, very useful, you know, to have, obviously, but we need to remember to turn it on and turn it off across multiple nodes. Sometimes it's going to be a lot faster to work with it off. We've got thousands of layers, but you know, it's that mental overhead of remembering that everything has to be enabled and the shutter angle has to be set correctly for each of the nodes. Well, this is where we come in with this new action. So if I have a look at the actions up here, I've got a create motion blur controller, and actions are they're little scripts, little Python scripts, which we can have a little look at and in a little bit. But what this one does is it uses the power of expressions to link automatically all of the other roto nodes, their motion blur, to this one master node here. So what this action's done is it's created up this dummy node, this dummy controller node. So I'm going to again, let's add in another node here, or another viewer here, so we can see what's what. Let's look in the parameters. Let's look at my nodes here. So with my motion blur controller over on the right hand side, if I turn that off, motion blur gets turned off on the nodes, and not just this node, but every other node, because they're all connected. And if I change my shutter angle here, let's change that to 180, and you can see immediately that that has affected our shutter angle across not just the active node, but every single other node, because they are all they're all connected using expressions. And if you are sort of technically minded and want to create these sort of controller nodes, I would suggest you take a little look at that script. It's just in the resources folder in Silhouette, and you can sort of see exactly what it's doing to create our little checkboxes and our little values here. And you can create your own controller nodes to be able to do whatever it is you need to do. We have run out of time. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of stuff that I wanted to show you. I actually wanted to show you. Let's take a very quick look at this. Yeah, I want to show you some of the other things we've got with regards to Primat, because we do have like Primat now built in as a lovely little node directly into Silhouette. So if you're doing keying, you're gonna love this. But I think, it's also the color estimation as well. This is something that came in 2022.5, but really starts to to come into its own when we start to work with it in something like Primat. But yeah, all of this sort of stuff is we're going to have time for this at a later point. We're going to be able to come in and explore these a little bit more as Silhouette gets released. There's going to be videos that are going to be dedicated to all of these things and going a lot deeper in them than we can do now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back off and send you back over into the studio, and I will see you again to talk about Silhouette very soon. Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, other Ben. It's exciting to see some of these additions of machine learning tools into Silhouette, and grain management is certainly going to be a bit more seamless from now on. In fact, I want to give away an annual subscription of Silhouette in just a minute, but first what we're going to do is I'm going to take a moment here just to promote our socials again. You've already found us on YouTube, and if you're not already a subscriber, hitting that subscribe button is genuinely the fastest way to get breaking news about new product releases and the best free training for all of the Boris Effects products. But did you know that there's also a Boris Effects Learn channel, which is dedicated to longer form training and series? Now, this is where we often tackle bigger projects or more complicated shots. So if you want to take your skills up to a completely different zone, head over and find Boris Effects Learn on YouTube. So there's a ton of good stuff on there. I'm also going to shout out our forums again at forum.boriseffects.com. And if you're a certified Zoomer or enjoy a more casual way of talking about projects and problems, then you can find our Discord server right here. So just scan the QR code or do the typing, whichever takes your fancy. Okay, now throughout the stream, people have been swooping out to Boris Effects Live to join in our prize draw. And it's not too late for you to do it too. Just go to Boris Effects Live and amble to the bottom of the page, find the entry form, and it just takes a few minutes to do. Not even minutes, it takes seconds, it takes moments. And you'll be with a chance to win one of our prizes. Now, of course, you're going to be too late to win the annual subscription of Silhouette though, because we've already started the Wheel of Justice I know. Oh, the wheel of something to spin and find the name on that. So if you take a quick look in chat now, you will see the lucky winner's name. Obviously, I wish I knew it so that I could say it now, but my powers do not stretch into seeing into the future. And of course, this section has been pre-recorded. Much of our team is out in Vegas for NAB, so we're breaking with tradition and doing live chat to go with all of this. All right, in fact, there I was again typing something in chat right now. If you look over there, actually, I probably forgot that I was about to say this. So right now I'm typing something in chat. So if you have a look at that, you'll see me saying something very clever and very witty, I'm sure. All right, we have got one more preview to show you today, and that is Mocha Pro 2023. If you're like me and are a long time Mocha lover, there's so much to enjoy about this upcoming release. So let's hear about it from Mocha product manager Martin Brennand, and we're going to have a little look at just some of the things coming our way soon.
Hello, it's Mocha Product Manager Martin Brennand, and welcome to this quick overview of what's coming up in Mocha Pro 2023. This release focuses a lot on making life easier, so we've got a lot of new workflow enhancement tools that really complement the tracking, roto, and rendering tools that exist inside the Mocha Pro workflow. So we're going to be diving into the features. We're not going to cover everything today because there's quite a few little features in here, but we'll show you some of the big ones that should get you excited. So let's dive in and start by having a look at a couple of the new roto tools. So here we are inside Mocha Pro 2023, and we've got a shot here that we've started to track to do some roto on. And as we come down here, we can see a bit of a hair starting to turn in space as the track is not planar. Now, normally the way that you would adjust this is you would come in here and start moving points around, or you'd use the transform tool to start scaling things in. But that can obviously be a bit tedious when you're working with organic shapes like this. So what we've introduced is something called the fall off tool. And you can see this big circle that's just turned up here. So if I adjust the radius of this circle, and I adjust the strength, we now have what's called the fall off radius, which lets us more organically adjust points within that range. This means that we get a much more useful area to adjust rather than just individual points. Now obviously you don't want to keep adjusting the radius up in this field, so we've got shortcut keys, so the control or command key to move the radius up and down, and the shift and command control key to adjust the strength. So if I make this slightly smaller, I can come in here and do just a tiny adjustment here instead. Another great thing about this tool is that you'll notice if I make this slightly larger, as I move this around, you can see that the fall off is not adjusting the points on the other side. And this is by design. We've designed this to be edge specific so that it doesn't get in the way of those edges while you're working. Because often splines will fold in on themselves, there'll be curves, there'll be extra contours. So you just want to be working on that singular edge. So this is a much, much more robust way to work with the selection tool. And this doesn't just work for the spline contours, this also works for the power mesh. So let's have a look at that. We'll come down to our mesh example here. So here we have a nice cluster of mesh points and we're moving out, and then she starts suddenly coughing, and this big shadow pushes all these meshes out of the way. So the way we can adjust this normally is we go up to the Edit Mesh tool, we come in and we start adjusting points. But again, you'll have to do those per point and that gets a bit fiddly. So we can again open our Fall Off tool, we'll just adjust the radius down a little bit, and then we can select that point and start just moving these back into position easily in a much more organic fashion. And this is really, really useful in the Power Mesh tool because it means that you get much more soft, sort of rubbery organic fall off, which really helps with, inserts and those general Power Mesh tracking workflows. So we've not just worked on those selections, we've also worked on the edges of splines. So for a long time when you've been working, you've had the edge offset to do like feathering and so on. So let's have a look at that. In the past, you would do this with either using the shortcut keys up here for selecting the outer edge or the inner edge, or you would use the outer edge in the edge properties. Now down in the edge properties, we have 3 separate buttons to help adjust this. So we've got the classic outer, and if we click this, you can see the outer edge coming out on this spline here. Let's turn on our map for a second. But now we have inner edge, and this will pull in the inner splines as well. So we can chuck those in like that. And then finally, we've got something called the both edge, and the both edge is quite a special one. So when you're scaling splines in any situation, you're usually scaling in and out with the transform tool. So if I go ahead and scale here, we can see we're getting a scale in and out, but this is a center of mass scale, which is not as useful for when you're doing shapes like this. What the both function does in edge offset is it takes the angle between the inner point and the outer point, and it bases the scale off that. So if I go ahead and scale this in using both, you'll see now we get a much more natural scale where it's smaller up here and larger down here because it's adjusting according to those edge angles. So it's a really, really quick way to keep moving and adjusting without having to do too much individual tweaking of those points. So we're getting a much tighter spline just by messing around with those buttons instead of having to go in and fiddle on each individual point. So that's sort of the edge tools we've added. We've got a nice smooth transition now. You don't have to keep clicking the buttons. You can actually just go ahead and press and hold, and you'll get a nice smooth transition. So when also you're working with Roto, often they get into big, large, and complicated shapes. And often you need to break those out into different parts. So for example here, what we've got is a classic example of doing a big long mesh track to get this nice organic flow of the upper arm and the lower arm. But when we get into this area, it starts to become a bit of a complicated mess because the arms come down and we really should have broken this into 2 separate shapes. So we can do that now by taking the original layer. Let's just turn off our mesh here. And we can come over and select just the bit that we want. So let's grab this upper arm here. And over in Edit menu, we can just choose Split Contour. And what this will do is it'll break the layer into a separate layer. So let's turn on our mat for this one. Now the important part here is it's not just breaking out the shape, it's actually splitting off all the animation and all the tracking so you get exactly the same motion as you had before. It's just now in 2 separate layers. So we can see also here there's a tiny gap, and that's by design as well because we didn't want to make a cut which would actually change the weighting of your spline. So we've kept the original spline weights so you can go in now and do more adjustments because obviously this is a workflow tool. It's not meant to be a be-all end solution. It's meant to help you move along to the next stage of the Roto workflow. So we've got splitting contours, but we've also got new duplication tools to help make the steps for tracking and Roto a bit easier when you want to start again or start a new area. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so in this example, we're going to start tracking backwards here. And we've started a decent rotor shape. We're going to get the whole dress here. But when we get down to about here, we realize that we really should have started a little bit further down. Now, there's multiple ways that you can take this. You could add new layers here, but that would add a keyframe and obviously animation. So you could go over and turn on the Uber key, add more animation and so on. But there's an easier way to start this. What you can do is just right-click this now, go to Layer, and say Snapshot Layer. And what this will do is it'll create a new layer without any of the tracking data, but it'll make sure that the position of that layer is exactly where you snapshotted it on for that frame. This means that it's much, much easier to start again or start a new area without having to redraw or just delete keyframes or clean anything out. So now I can go ahead and adjust new shapes, just like so, and start tracking forwards again, and I've got an entirely new shape to work with from that position. So this is really useful for either breaking it up in time or just starting again without having to redo everything. You've got your shape, but it's in a new position in time. So you can use this in many different ways. While we're here, you can also see down in the timeline you might have noticed 2 new buttons. We've got T and T, and these are jump to end of track buttons. So I've just done this section here, and rather than having to jump back and find where my keyframe is, I can just click the T button now, and it'll jump to the last place I tracked, and I can start tracking backwards. I've also got a new feature here. If I've done with this area, I can come up now to my layer properties, and over here we've just thrown in this nice little button here, which is trim tracked ranges, which means now the layer will disappear once I'm done tracking where I need to. So again, just small convenient functions just to make workflow easier without you having to do more clicks, more searching, more finding, and so on. So we've got a lot of these kind of little roto things for breaking out layers and sort of snapshotting layers and duplicating layers. But what about the other way? What about when we need to finish our work and we want to combine things back together? Well, for that, we've got a new tool called Merge Tracks. So in this example, we've started a track here on this shot. Let's just track this through. And it's merging around, and we're kind of happy with this. It's going to come head on in a second. And we realized that we wanted to start from the other end of the shot as well, just to make sure it's locked on nicely. So I'm going to come over to my other layer. Let's have a look at this. And we started this from the end of the shot. So we've started it over here just to make sure it looked right. And we've tracked it backwards. Now, obviously, in the past, what you would have had to do here if you wanted two separate tracks is you would have had to actually do those as separate ones, maybe copy keys, maybe try and fudge something and comp the two tracks together. But rather than do that, what you can do now is use the tool that we've just been talking about, which is Merge Tracks. So to do this, what we do is we grab our two layers here, and you can select as many layers as you like, as long as the top layer is the most prominent layer. So your top layer is always going to be the one that takes the dominant keyframes, so all these keyframes will be taken, and all the layers below will merge into their specific points. So it's sort of dominant from top to bottom. So I'm going to select these two layers, and we can either right-click and say Merge Layer Tracks, or there's a new button down here called Merge Layer Tracks as well. And rather than actually merging the tracks together and deleting them, we create a new track so you don't lose any information. But this new track is now the combination of both those tracked layers, and you get a seamless integration from both crossing over each other. Now, there are going to be some caveats. Obviously, if there's gaps, you might see some issues. If you've got two non-coplanar tracks, they may not work together. But when you're doing complicated tracks, when you've got tracks that will come together, this is a really useful feature for just blending together work when you've been working on difficult shots. So Merge Tracks is going to be really, really fun to use. We've also, to visualize these tracks a little bit easier, we've updated the trusty grid tool a bit. So the grid tool in the past was a big, chunky kind of grid that always was the same size relative to the surface. Now over in the viewer preferences, you can set the scale to whatever you like. So the default was about 300. So you can see that's probably what you're used to if you've used Mocha before. Now you can adjust it as far down as 10%, which is quite small, as you can see, or you can make it really, really large if you really want to see it from a distance to see how it's going. So, a little convenience function just to make it a bit easier to use when the grid is useful for seeing stuff, but you want it a little bit more out of the way, so you can scale that down if you need to. So we're going to talk a little bit more now about the rendering tools, and one that's sort of been useful in the past but hasn't really seen the love it needs to is the region of interest tool in the insert module. So let's jump over to that. So here we have a shot where we've done a mesh track, and we're obviously going to do some facial work here using the insert tool. So if I go over to the insert tool, normally the way this would work is we would paint over the shot, or we'd get a small region where we can plaster it onto the face and then do our manipulations. So if you wanted to do a full frame, you'd have to expand it out to the entire region. So if we look at this, we'll insert a classic example here. So we've got a paint. Here's our shot in the surface, but obviously being a full frame, it's clipped to the surface edges. Let's just turn off that grid for a second. So normally what we would have to do is we'd have to go ahead and say align surface, so it matches the shot exactly, and then we would have to use all layers to mask out the area. So now when we look at this, we've got a grid warp. You can see when we play this back, it will warp, but we start to have problems with this because of two reasons. One, you've got a big image being distorted over time, which can lead to problems. The other problem is that because your surface is so massive, Things like grid warp is much less granular, and you don't get as much easy adjustment within the area you're trying to work. So what we can do instead, let's just undo those, is we can use something called the region of interest tool. So I'm going to turn off grid warp here and come over to source. Now, region of interest has been there for the entire time. It's been there for a long time, but we've just fixed it up a bit to make it a lot more user-friendly. So now, when I say fit ROI to surface, you can see it pretty much looks exactly the same as what we did with align to surface. But now, it's actually clipped to the surface properly as a crop. This means now when we look at the warp, we can adjust in a much more granular fashion, and it's much easier to do subtle adjustments over time without it getting a bit strange. So it's just a little adjustment there in the insert tool which makes things much, much easier to manipulate. We'll have also added some nice speed improvements to the remove module. So I'm going to come over to After Effects for this. Over in After Effects, I'm going to load up the Mocha plugin. So in this shot, what we've got is a classic locked shot, and there's someone walking through the frame, and we want to remove that. And there's a bit of lighting adjustment that's happening here, there's a bit of a gamma shift and so on. So in the past, when you're working with locked shots, you would have had to still track the background. So if you're not familiar with the remove module, you always need a tracked background and a foreground area that's masking out the thing you want to remove. But with locked shots, it always was a bit unnecessary to have to track that background. So now, in the new release of Mocha Pro 2023, what we've got is something called static scene. So you can tell Mocha this is a static scene, and then you don't need any background layers, which means you can avoid all that additional tracking information that you would have otherwise had to do with a background layer. So I can go ahead and start tracking this and rendering it, and it's going to do exactly the same thing as though there was a background layer there. And you can see a little bit of a lighting problem here, and so all the normal illumination modeling changes work with this method as well. So we can go and check on interpolated illumination in here, and that will render and clean up that lighting pass. So it's going to make a big difference, especially for those big long shots that are locked off where you're trying to just clean it up and remove pedestrians and various objects from the scene. It just saves so much time not having to have to track all that extra information. So that's just a few of the features that we're showing here today for Mocha Pro 2023. There's quite a few more, but we have a short amount of time, and we're hoping you'll see what's coming up when the release comes out later. So have a look around at all the stuff going on here at the NAB previews. We hope you enjoy, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks very much, and goodbye.
I mean, that's some great stuff coming our way soon for Mocha Pro, and in fact for all of the Boris Effects product line. Now, I can't give you dates about when these are about to drop. Well, I mean, actually, I won't give you dates about when these are about to drop, but what I can say is this: expect them soon. If you hit the subscribe button on YouTube, you'll hopefully get launch videos and training sessions pop up on your recommended page the moment they come out. Or if someone hits the wrong button again, you might even see those videos before they're meant to come out. So if that's not a good reason to subscribe, then I don't know what is. So I mean, we've seen a lot today. We've been through a lot. It's been emotional. We're almost out to the other side. There's just a couple more things that we need to do. And actually they all involve giving away things. So Martin's just shown us some of the features that are going to speed up our Mocha workflows in 2023. So, why not give away an annual subscription of Mocha Pro to one lucky winner? Now, like all the lucky winners today, I won't know your name. I do know that it will be in the chat window in just a few moments, down there or over there somewhere. So congratulations to you, whoever you are. I always knew you had it in you. You had that kernel of Mocha Pro luck. I also know that you, and in fact all of the winners today, will be contacted within the next couple of days about how you get your prizes. And this is tough now. You know, I didn't want to have to do this. In fact, I actively argued against this because it's a very big responsibility for me. But I'm going to give away one more thing. And that is an annual subscription to the Boris Effects suite. This also includes Mocha Pro, Sapphire, Continuum, Particle Illusion, Silhouette, and Optics. It's a huge prize. It's a prize that I know has already changed lives. And it's going to one lucky winner in just a moment. But there's just time for me to remind everyone about our spring sale. It's 25% off anything you want, including the suite. It really is the best time of year to buy. These are new purchases only, one per customer, and please see the full T's and C's on the Boris Effects website. But let's come back. Let's focus on the grandest of our grand prizes, the Boris Effects suite. Now, right now, we have a Boris Effects monkey throwing a blunted dart into a sea of balloons. Each one of those balloons contains a name of someone who entered their name into the prize draw on boriseffectslive.com. Whatever balloon is popped first, that name will be frantically typed into the chat as our big winner. Or we actually might just let the software do that automatically and give the monkey the night off again. But, you know, whatever we end up doing, just know that the winner is in the chat now and is being congratulated by everyone else in the chat now. So well done to you, whoever you are. But that's it. That's our spring sale preview show. We've seen a lot of stuff. But we haven't seen all of the things that are coming. You know, most of these, they are just sneak peeks. To see everything, you'll have to catch our next live streams. You should have a look at our new videos and obviously keep an eye on the Boris Effects website. Or, you know, just join the newsletter, whatever you prefer to do. I just want to say a big thank you to all of our presenters today. I want to say thank you to Nick Rodriguez, Brian Fox, Elizabeth Postol, Nick Harauz, Martin Brennan, and alternate reality Ben Brownlee. So, from me, this reality is Ben Brownlee, and all of us at Boris Effects Live, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.